So yeah, we are jumping back into our True Detective Season 1 recap and breakdown of each episode. This week we're jumping into episode 5, The Secret Fate of All Life. It's my personal favorite, and yeah, just all around solid in my opinion. What do you think, Justin? How do you view this one?
It's a good one, and it's transitioning off of Who Goes There, which I said last week is my favorite, and they are wrapping up the lead through the Iron Crusaders, Ginger, and attempting to get linked up with the meth cook Reggie Ledoux. They are linked up with his partner, who declines Russ, but they do follow him to the stash house. They do follow him back to Reggie's lair, if you will.
Can we
And
talk
that's
about
really
that
where
meeting?
yeah, absolutely.
Because I feel like that's the first time we're introduced to Reggie Ledoux's partner. What's his name? Do you got a name for him?
It's the wall Ledoux. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, they Russ takes Ginger to the bar to meet DeWall, Reggie Ledoux's partner, cook partner, where Russ propositions him crystal for coke, right? Crystal
Yep,
for meth.
yep.
Gets shut down pretty quick. And I just feel like this actor, again, every actor in this series, supporting roles, they just knock it out of the park. This guy is, you just feel like the evil on him. He just looks scary. He stares through Rust Cole and calls him out for it, turns down his offer. And what does he say to him? He's like, I don't like your face. It makes me want to do things to it. Such good statements that suit Rust so well, like it's so deep and dark. And like Rust is like, oh, wow, I'm not fucking with, a regular criminal here. These guys are
Hmm.
definitely on one. But yeah, you're right. They follow him back to the Reggie Ledoux cook site. Marty
Hmm.
follows him. I love how, this is going to go into a quick Marty discussion, but I love how they get out of the vehicles and they're like coming up with their plan on how to sneak up on these guys cooking. And he's like, Russ goes, you ever been hunting, Marty? And of course, he's meaning like actual hunting. Like he wants to know about Marty here, like what is the extent of your combat experience essentially?
Oh,
And Marty's response is, I shot a 10-point
got
buck year before last, 50 yards. He's like, I'm not talking about sitting in a treehouse. I'm not talking about sitting in a treehouse while some poor deer comes and eats your bait. I'm talking about hunting. And
yeah, you're
like,
a dick.
God, you're a prick. I love the dynamic between them. Like, it's just phenomenal writing. Every line, not one line is wasted in this show. And, even when there's hyper tense moments approaching or like hard drama, dramatic scenes, like the fact that they can still riff off each other like that, between the dialogue and the lines that are written for them, it just adds so much, like brief elements of humor to break the tension. And I love that,
Hmm.
you know.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? The thing about this episode is, it's such a disgusting scene that they come across at this site. And I'm sure if you dropped 100 people in Marty's shoes, I'm sure a lot of them, 99, if not 100 people would do the same thing he would do,
Yeah.
that he did. And it's just wild though because he is there to do a job. With that being said, he's there to be professional. He's there to solve a case, and he kind of allows the emotions to get to him. And he takes out Reggie Ledoux, shoots him right in the head, leading to DeWall, trying to take off and tripping over a tripwire that takes himself out. And it's crazy because last week, no, 2 weeks ago, we were talking about Cole coming across Errol Childress, the Yellow King, the lawnmower man, and Marty's kind of impatient, just kind of tendencies kicked on and really prevented Rust from speaking to Childress, which we spent a little bit of time talking about and both believe that, if Marty hadn't have interrupted him, who knows? Cole would have probably just solved the case right there. He would have put it together. He would have saw the scars. He would have,
Hmm.
he probably would
Yep.
have wrapped it there. And you can kind of, carry that same narrative into this episode. I'm not saying, you know, Marty was wrong. I mean, once again, he came across a really disgusting, terrible sight. He responded, but at the end of the day, he is a homicide detective. He's there to solve a case. He's there to do a job. And his kind of, tendencies of rolling right off of emotion rather than, trying to be mindful and, patient, that emotion, that raw emotion leads him to taking out Ledoux and DeWall. And it really, I feel confident in saying, prolongs the case. Obviously Errol Childress is not there, but him taking out both the Ledouxs, they believe they got their men. We're here, we
Right.
have links to the victims, they have the meth, the LSD, they have the victims that they find. They have it all. They have all the evidence. Ultimately, though, as we know, they don't. And I truly believe, if Marty doesn't respond the way he does right there and shoots Reggie, triggering to this, big scene that I'm sure we're going to talk about here, you know, they do it the right way. They sit him down. They get Cole in the box with him. Cole talks to him. Maybe they find more witnesses, different areas of evidence that they look into. And I
Right.
truly believe that the case is prolonged because of Marty. And I truly believe that if they would have just arrested them. I know it's very hard. It was a disgusting, terrible scene, but I feel like if they would have booked them appropriately and charged them, I feel like they would have found Errol Childress, in a matter of time, the Yellow King, and found Carcosa, rather than, what is it, like another 7 years later or something when
Right.
they, have this next lead. So what do you think about that and just kind
I
of
don't disagree with you, but I also like, we meet Reggie Ledoux for the first time. We meet his partner. I already forget his name. Doesn't
the
matter.
wall?
DeWalt. Yeah. I don't know that they strike you as the guys that would talk and cooperate with police. So
Hmm.
maybe not,
Okay.
like I will say, had Rust found what Marty finds in Reggie Ledoux's house in the garage or whatever, I think Rust would have had more restraint than Marty.
Agreed.
Marty really shows emotion to the case for the first time, like real emotion almost for the first
Yeah.
time at the scene. Something that strikes me about it as well is I love how their stories corroborate with one another's about what happened 20 years later. They still have each other's back when, they dislike each other as partners, whereas
Hmm.
people, they don't agree with the case a lot of the time. Marty does not agree with Rust on his theories or whatnot, even though Rust proves right time and time again. They dislike each other's personal philosophies, views on religion, what
Hmm.
have you. But after all those years, when being interviewed in present day times by the current investigators,
Yeah.
their stories still align, and it just goes to show the
Yeah.
respect that they
Yeah.
still have for one another. Obviously,
For
if they
sure.
would stray from the story, they're going to jail for, or getting in tr big time trouble for, capping two guys. So obviously they don't want to rat on themselves, but I feel like it more so shows the respect that's deep down, the appreciation they have for each other and what they both went through as a team. Even after all these years, their stories do not change whatsoever about what the reality of it and how they, tell their superiors what actually happened. So that I really, I rewatched the episode this afternoon before this, and I really thought, that stood out to me more so now than ever. I also want to talk about, meeting Reggie Ledoux for the first time.
Yeah.
Talk about a guy who just gives you the creeps, a character. Very rarely in movies anymore do like a villain like really get under your skin, or make you feel off or just like disturbed by a character. Reggie Ledoux just kills his role. Like
Hmm.
that dude he looks the part, no doubt, from the tattoos to
Hmm.
the dirt and grime and filth on him. Like he just looks like a scumbag so
Walking around
bad.
with these big ass filthy boots and like a filthy ass white
A
towel
dirty
around
ass
his
towel
waist.
around his waist with his ghetto prison tattoo.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what
For
I mean?
sure.
Like he just
Yeah.
looks the part almost too good. And it's disturbing. Like the whole scene is pretty hard to watch. As soon as they bring Reggie Ledoux out and they handcuff him and he's sitting there, he starts to talk about black stars.
Hmm.
And I have a theory about this that we have talked about before. I think it also correlates to what Matthew McConaughey is saying two episodes earlier when he's talking about, when you look at DBs and photos of crime scenes, what all of them have in common is that the facial expressions on the victims appears like they've all welcomed death. I think that directly correlates with what Reggie Ledoux is talking about when he says black stars and he's looking up in the sky and in a trance-like state almost. I think there's meaning to it, and I think that it comes out later in the show, but I just wanted to mention it here today. That way we can reference back to it as well in the future.
And if we're going to reference back to anything, time is a flat circle.
Time is a flat circle.
We were just talking about that in Titanic. Fucking Rose. She goes right back to the Titanic and is with Jack Dawson. Literally, that's where she goes when she dies. Just right back to that moment.
Same with all the maids and butlers. They die and they're just a maid and a butler on the Titanic again in heaven or wherever.
That's their afterlife, just
Yeah.
being a fucking a maid and a waiter. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And both characters too. Reggie Ledoux and DeWall, like you talked about. I mean, his monologue with Rust when Ginger's still present is, it's eerie, man. It's dark. Talking about I can see your soul on the edges of your eyes.
I can see your soul at the edges of your eyes. It's corrosive, like acid.
You got a darkness in you.
Yeah.
He calls it. I mean, we're fans of Russ Cole, but he's a dark man. He's got a past. He's got a
Yep.
lot of demons in there, if you will.
And the
And
fact that
I
the
think
villain
that's
can
what.
point that out about him as well. One of the
Yeah.
villains looks at Rust and is like, something's off about this guy.
Oh yeah.
Whether I know he's an undercover cop or not, something
Yeah.
about him, I don't like it. I think that's interesting.
No, absolutely. And I think if you rewatch that scene where DeWall is with McConaughey and Ginger, like Rust is taken back by it. Like
Yeah.
he really doesn't know what to say, and that's literally one in a few moments in the whole show. If not, actually, the one encounter he has with Maggie is the other one, but I feel like that's a different emotion. It's more like anger and hurt that she brings up, like his fatherhood and like his past life as a husband. But like those are really like the only two scenes I can think of where he's like, I got
Questions
nothing to
himself.
say.
Exactly. You're
And this
absolutely
one
right.
is, it's not really like an emotion of like anger or anything. It's more or less like kind of fear in a way and like what the hell? Like that's,
Yep. I
because the
totally
wall like
agree.
he hit it on the head. So yeah, both characters, DeWall and Reggie Ledoux, they play their parts well. They're creepy guys. They have to be creepy to be doing what they're doing, linked up with Errol Childress, who we'll talk about later. And just the one last point that I want to speak on before we move on. I know you had shared, I don't think these guys would be the type to cooperate. I don't think they would be the type to,
No.
sing in an interrogation room, and I couldn't agree more. However, I think you're not giving our man Russ Cole enough credit in the box. I think he would get something out of him. I think he would do a little fishing, and
Yeah, but
I think
how can you say that when DeWalt just puts him in his spot at the bar
it's a good
talking?
point.
Like it's like he met his match on a one-on-one interrogation. He didn't get anything from him. He got shut down and didn't know what to do. Now he was on drugs, still coming down from the night before, technically. But I mean,
And he is still on his character too of Crash. Like
yeah,
I'm here to do
true,
business.
true,
He's not on the job. But
true.
you're right. He met his freaking match, didn't he? He met
Yeah.
his match, and that's why I really enjoy the opening to
He
this
doesn't even have
episode.
he doesn't even have meaningful, substantial conversations of substance, I should say, with Ledoux when Ledoux is in cuffs and Cole has his gun drawn on DeWalt,
Mhm.
before Marty comes out. Um, he asks Ledoux like why the antlers. He doesn't get anything back. Then he's like, time is a flat circle. And Cole's like, what is that, Nietzsche? Shut the fuck up.
Shut
Like
the
he doesn't
fuck.
really know what to say to him. Like he doesn't get anything out of him at all. I think it really is. Rust Cole is a force of nature for different reasons, and he's meeting people who are just freaks of nature, evil incarnate, essentially. Like he hasn't ever had a case like this, never would again. So yeah, I think it's kind of subtly, even hinting at that Rust Cole is even at a loss a little bit when it comes to how to deal with these guys. But Marty actually deals with them. Marty, comes across something horrific. He finds the two missing children, one of them already deceased,
Yeah.
and comes out and puts Reggie Ledoux, takes him out. And then DeWalt takes himself out, hitting one of his own booby traps. And I like how taken as heroes because their story, they come up with a story about what happened, even though it's not how it happened at all.
Right.
Marty gets the promotion,
Of
starts
course.
detective sergeant or some shit, and Rust gets an accommodation for bravery only on behalf of, Marty's recommendation. And I
Hmm.
love how they go back to the office, and the first thing Quesada says is, Jesus, Cole, you couldn't manage to get shot?
Yeah.
And he's like, not this time. And I just think, like, when I heard that this time, it just took on a new meaning. I was like, wait a second, was Quesada in on it? Like, was
Right.
Quesada a piece of shit who was like, this Rust Cole guy is too smart for to be working here?
Yeah, we
Like,
were
is
talking
there some
about that in
truth?
episode
We
one.
were, yeah. Like, was there some truth? Is there some truth to the fact that maybe Quesada just despises Cole to the point where he is working with, the Colt and wants Cole out of there, wants Cole killed? I thought that was an interesting line.
Yeah. One common statement in psychology is sarcasm is a form of honesty. And it's like you look at something like that and him potentially being linked. It kind of makes sense there,
It
doesn't it?
does. Yep, it
Like this
does.
dude's kind of been on my ass. He's been on my tracks, and you know what I mean? He's been
Exactly.
on our tracks. Like, couldn't
Getting,
manage to get shot there, buddy.
yep,
So
absolutely.
very good point. But that's a wrap for Quesada, though, then,
He's
because
done. Yep, because then it jumps ahead to 2002,
to
7 years later.
2002, right? 2002. I always do kind of get the middle one messed up, the middle timeline.
So
Um,
Marty's kids are grown at this point, and
yeah.
Rust is with a woman engaged almost, if not like real close to getting married to that lady. We find out their relationship doesn't work out. There's a scene where the two of them are watching TV together, and she's like super fixated on the TV, and Rust is just not there present. His eyes are just kind of like he's enjoying, the fact that he has somebody. You can see it, like the scene just kind of breaks it down and shows like this woman that he's with is like all about the present moment and like watching TV together and like something as light as watching whatever they're watching, and Rust is just not there. He's
Mhm.
not present, and we find out that they don't last. We find out Marty's daughter is, gets in trouble with the law with two older boys over the age of 18.
If I may, really quick,
Yep.
jumping back to Rust and his girlfriend, who's actually played by the actress in Haunting of Hill House.
Yeah, what's her name?
I don't know. We'll insert here. She's a great actress, but have you ever seen the deleted scene between Cole and her where they're preparing dinner?
No,
Um,
I'll have to watch that.
it's a good scene. It's not long. It's maybe 2 minutes, and it's them preparing dinner, and it's her talking about wanting to start a family and like have kids, and he obviously just isn't about it, and it, kind of progressively gets worse and a little aggressive, to the point where he's visibly upset. But it's a good scene. If you haven't watched it, check it out. And I
I
just
will.
love his little monologue in that part where he's talking about things not working out. And he's brutally honest about himself, and just kind of his own personal weaknesses, if you will, especially in a relationship. And what's his word? I wear him down. I wear him down. And it's just like it's a really it just really hits his character. It just kind of takes it a little deeper. I mean, we're already aware of his history and what he's been through and his divorce, but
Hmm.
really hearing from him how that trauma has and continues to affect him in new relationships. Not himself, really, but other people, his significant other. So hearing Cole talk about it and speak on it himself, thoroughly, I really like how they included that,
I do too. Yeah, that's a good point because it's complete opposite of what we get out of Marty.
Yeah,
Marty takes no accountability for anything, and
yeah,
Rust is like, yeah, I don't work out in relationships because I'm not good for people.
yeah.
Essentially, I wear them out, and Yeah, I think that's important. Just another like indicator, sign that the writers are telling us every which way that Rust and Marty couldn't be more opposite in
Definitely.
terms of, husband or boyfriend or whatever, masculine type roles in the household.
Right.
So yeah, good point there. Real good point.
And, obviously they think all is good. We jump ahead to 2002. They're the big heroes, promotion, things going well. Marty's, back in the house, as you said, him and Maggie work things out. His daughters are a little older now. They're teenagers, they're into their own thing, which, we'll dive into. But as far as the job, they're at the top of their game. Things are well.
We learn that Rust starts getting calls all around the state to get admissions of guilt for other departments.
Yep.
And yeah, who does he go to? He goes to another precinct.
Goes to interrogate Guy Francis,
Yes.
a suspect in a double murder. And,
Ugly motherfucker.
yeah. And, Cole being Cole, he gets him. He
Quick.
cops to
Yeah.
the double murder. He successfully comes in, gets the information he needs. And what I love about Cole is, he subtly, it's like, yep, I got you, motherfucker. But to try to strike a deal, Guy Francis drops a bombshell, which just kind of shifts everybody's life again in 2002. And that's claiming that Cole and Marty did not get their guy, their real guy, the Yellow King. At first, Cole isn't buying it, but as soon as Guy Francis drops the Yellow King and calls him by that name, Cole, he's triggered by it. And, it visibly, shakes Cole. He gets pissed. He assaults Guy Francis and he leaves.
Well, hang
Um,
on, hang on, hang on. He doesn't just leave. Two cops come in and break
yeah.
it up and immediately separate, which obviously they would in real life, but the one guy pins Guy Francis against the wall. The other guy pulls Cole away. But
hmm
when they take him out into the hallway, I think it's very clear that these two cops are in on it. I
Yeah, definitely. Well, correct me if I'm wrong. Obviously, Guy Francis, he himself, right? We know that he supposedly committed that. But as we find out later, one of those guards, one of the guys you're referring to, was a Childress,
Right. He,
correct?
yep, Cole asks who were the guards on duty last night, and the two names
Yes.
like Mahoney and Childress.
Yep, Mahomie and Childress. And obviously the Yellow King's last name is Childress, and he has bastard ties through the Tuttle family. And Childress goes back to the sheriff, the first timeline, who never reported the missing girl. So we're starting to now see a pattern of names pop up and, as a first time viewer, you don't really pick up on it. You're not
No.
really remembering every name that's thrown at you. But,
Right. Right.
as we've discussed so many times, the writers know what they're doing and they are dropping those clues for you to put together as the viewer. And sure enough, now this is two connected Childresses that have major involvement in major aspects of the case. So you have, the Childress, and the sheriff who does not report the missing girl in the 90s. And now here we are, early 2000s. We have another Childress who is coincidentally watching Guy Francis. It's his shift when he unalives himself. So
Right.
very good writing once again. And they are laying it out for the viewer to, also kind of put some of these things together.
And we know that he took Guy Francis takes a phone call
Yes,
outside of his cell an
right.
hour before he unalives himself. So yeah,
Exactly.
again, I think it's the conspiracy that Rust has been hinting at or alluding to very loosely throughout the first four episodes starts to come together here in the, final 10 minutes or so of episode five.
Yep.
The viewer starts to be like, okay, maybe there is some conspiracy going on here because this is weird. And yeah, you're right. Just excellent writing. And that really does take us to the finale. Once Rust starts sniffing around the finale, I'm sorry, this really starts taking us to the conclusion of the episode. Rust starts getting this idea that, okay, a call was placed to the prison where Guy Francis is. From this, he traces the call to some random toll booth, in the middle of nowhere. And he finds a reason to go back to that school, the burned out school, the hurricane school,
Yeah.
and he's doing some solo investigating and comes across a whole slew of clues, devil traps, a few other things I think he finds, doesn't he? Maybe another mural on the wall. If I
I,
could be
I,
mistaken on that, but
yeah, definitely a devil trap. Definitely a devil trap.
yep,
Yeah, and that's all he needed to start sniffing. We know what type of detective Cole is. And when he follows through with one of the old schools through the Tuttle Ministries, he comes across that trap and he just knows, yep, that guy was telling the truth and we really did not get our guy. We may have got, people involved, which they did. It's not like the big shootout in the beginning of the episode was nothing. They got two of the three. So they certainly have been putting in that work, but as far as the Yellow King, as far as like the link to Carcosa, no, they didn't get that yet. And that's really like the true leads they've been following since episode one is the
right.
Yellow King, the man with the scars, Carcosa. And Cole just knows, yep, there's more work to be done here.
Exactly. I think another important thing to bring up too is the fact that, the fact that Rust gives another speech to these two investigators in present day times, or the secret fate of all life. These two children that they rescued. Time is a flat circle. He adopts that phrase from Reggie Ledoux and says everything we've ever done or will do, we're going to do over and over again for all of eternity,
Hmm.
and that the secret fate of all life is that we will wake up in our life again and again and again, just reliving our life, and that there's nothing we can do about it. And I feel like that speech is really what triggers the investigators to finally let loose as to why they're interrogating Marty and Rust in present day times. They're like, okay, we've heard enough. Rust is crazy. And that's when they accuse him of essentially being in the area again in present day times because he has guided the investigation the entire time, has led it where he wants it to go, and Marty has always just followed and never was inquisitive enough or suspicious of Rust, so he just followed suit. And these two detectives, when they're pretty much telling Marty and Russ to his face that we think you're guilty. We think you're here doing this shit again. And you eliminated Reggie Ledoux and DeWalt because they had something on you and you wanted to frame them. And they lay out their entire investigation of Rust to Rust, and put him on the spot. And Rust has this look on his face when they explain it all to him, like, holy shit, like, wow, the secret fate of all life, like, I'm right. Like, I'm on it. Like, this is a conspiracy. People know that I've been around these crime scenes because they just told me I've, five different people, five different witnesses have seen me at five different, scenes of the crimes. And his face of like, he laughs about it when they, who would laugh when you're being accused of all these homicides and assaults and cult-like murders? You would only laugh, like Russ does, like he chuckles under his breath and is like, huh, funny. Like you think you're on to me, but really this just proves my point that this is a huge ass conspiracy.
Hmm.
And they're, trying to pin everything on me now. And it made me think like, are these two investigators, do they really think that Rust is bad? Or do you think they're being led, being told to investigate Rust by the higher ups who are involved in the conspiracy?
Well, that's a great question because Cole actually brings up to Marty the idea that they may be involved. He actually, expresses that to Marty. So that's a great question, especially since we were just talking a little bit about Casada, queso.
Exactly. Yeah.
So here we are, years later, and there's people in, similar positions, who are coming at Cole. Why? Why? Yeah, it's interesting because Cole is around. So sure, maybe if they aren't connected, like maybe they do truly believe like what they're, portraying, like what they're putting out there, because there are some weird coincidences, like, okay, yeah, Cole's showing up at the crime scene, he's saying that he's spending time up north when he really wasn't, and they were putting it together when, he went undercover in episode 4 and no, like his, he never went to see his pops, like, so they do put things together for sure. So I don't know. That's a great question. Maybe they do truly believe that he is involved. He is the guy and he's kind of just playing a game to, cover his tracks. I personally do believe, though, that I like to believe, I think it kind of makes the show even more fun, that they do have some type of involvement. And if they don't have involvement directly, then what you're saying, where higher ups are kind of pointing them in that direction.
I
Um,
think the higher ups are dictating, you need to investigate this guy.
I do too, because right before they bust it all open in the finale, Marty does decide to go to the one partner and says, "Look, like, I'm here. What do you want? Like, do you want us to go to somewhere else or do you want me to bring it to you?" And he's like, "Bring it to me." So I do believe like they are innocent, but those higher ups, those big people, as Guy Francis would say, I do, think that they're pushing them in a direction. I got a quick question for you, if I may. The reason I love this show is it makes us talk just about different things. We even brought up just what 2 episodes ago, Cole's mindset on religion and, the expectation of divine reward and why people do what they do in regards to religion. When he brings up the time is a flat circle, I love this episode. I know it's your favorite. It's one of my favorites. He brings it up and, it's a very deep subject. Anybody he's speaking to about it, for example, these two detectives, they're looking at him like he's fucking insane. They're looking at
Hmm.
him like he's nuts. And it's crazy because let's just say you truly believed in that yourself and like push this show to the side and you would like explain that to somebody. They would probably look at you the same way. And what's interesting about that is why? Like, why do we as a species, why do we as mankind believe we have such a grasp on what death is, on what time is? Like, let's look at some examples here. Isn't the world like 70% ocean,
Hmm.
something like that? And I think we've explored like 7% of it, if that.
If that, yeah.
Um, and what the reason I bring that up is for an example is because that's something that's like at our fingertips. Like that's something like we could really try to keep doing every day, and we have such limitations still due to how big it is and pressure and water and all that shit. But it's like that's something at our fingertips that we have control over, if you will, is exploring the oceans, and we haven't. Or you look at something like dreams. They really don't know shit about dreams for the most part. They have so many like open-ended questions, things they can't explain, they don't understand. It's like, well, that's interesting because everybody dreams every single night for the most part, and we don't know shit about it. So those are two examples of big things in our life. Every human's life, something they all experience that as a species we know nothing about pretty much, even though it's at our fingertips to do something about it
Sure.
and learn more.
Yeah.
But then you look at something like death. We don't have really any way to study that the way we have the ability to study the ocean or study dreams. Death is death, apparently, right? That's
Hmm.
what so many people believe. When you die, and that's a wrap. Why do we believe that as a society, though? Like, why do we believe that as a species when you look at these two in examples and it's like, how do we have any way to study what death really is, what time really is? Why do we have such a clear understanding of time, of death, of X, Y, and Z? And
Yeah.
it's another reason why I love this episode because it brings up such like a intriguing subject.
Sure.
And anybody you would try to spew that to, like let's just say you went to Wawa and spewed that to a stranger, somebody in your family or something. It's like they're probably gonna look at you like you're fucking crazy. But like, why? Like, what evidence do we have to support anything else? You
Right.
know what I mean? So I don't know. I just wanted to bring that up because the one of the main reasons I love this show, it makes you think. It makes you kind of like maybe second guess some stuff and just have these types of discussions. And this is a prime example. Death, time is a prime example where we have no control over, but people believe, our species believe we have such a grasp on it and such an idea of what it is. We don't. But why
Right.
do we believe we do? Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect sense. I think I agree completely. I think it doesn't necessarily make everyone question things as much as, oh wow, I've never thought of that idea or have given that much stake before, or that whole concept of you're not dying, you're reliving your life over and over and over again. That definitely stuck with me when the first time I watched this. I mean, it still does when I watch it and I hear him talk about it. I'm like,
For
yeah,
sure.
why couldn't that be a scenario, where what does he say? He's like, "Well, how many times have we had this conversation?"
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
and I think that that's so true. Like, if life is a dream, as he says it, and time is a flat circle, then what is reality, I guess? And it's just so deep, really, and like
So deep.
it's hard to even grasp. and like try to put into words, I guess.
Because I mean, like you said, I mean, he literally makes a statement like, we don't even remember our lives. Like, I couldn't tell you what I did 8 days ago. Shit, I couldn't even really tell you like 2 days ago. Like, I could, keep it brief, but like,
Right.
we live a life every single day. But it's like if I threw a date at you, like, hey, what did you do? Fuck, I don't know.
Exactly.
Or you like think back about times in your life. Like I was just talking to Kelly about this the other day. It's like, isn't it weird? Let's say I worked at a restaurant, let's say for 2 years, and it's like these people are part of my life every single day. They're part of my life because I'm working with them like 40, 50 hours a week. Maybe I'll go hang out with them afterwards. But like 10 years later, it's like, oh shit, I forgot about that person. Or
Yeah,
fuck, what was their name? Even though at that time it's like, no, like they're literally part of my life every single
sure.
day.
Yeah,
Just another thing, that Cole brings up, like just the grasp of time and especially death too. Like I think death more than time, but just those two subjects, I just feel like as a society, as mankind, I feel like we believe we have such a great understanding of what both are, and we lie about having those understandings, but in reality, I believe we have no clue. And I think it's interesting that people believe we do when we look at like the ocean, for example, or dreams, for example, when it's like that's actually something at our fingertips that we can control, but we have no idea. So why are we so set over here? It's just interesting, you
it
know?
is. Yeah, I think Cole says it best, I guess to sum up this episode when says death created time to grow the things
Mm,
that it would kill.
yeah, what a line, dude. Who
Yeah,
wrote that?
right,
Jesus.
right. And I mean, if you could have a discussion about that line in itself, you're referring to death as a noun, essentially. Death created time to grow the things that it would kill. And I
Hmm.
just, yeah, dark as hell. But yeah, like you could ponder over that one, for days after watching this show.
Hmm.
And again, I think that puts a good cap on the episode, but and really just
Sure it is.
again sums up and illustrates Cole's perspective on life, really. And
Absolutely.
as we get deeper and deeper into the series, going into next week, Marty and Rust think that they've figured out the crime, but now Rust is back onto the conspiracy theory, and we'll see what happens where they go from here.
Absolutely. Great episode, though. This is your favorite?
It is my favorite for
Yeah,
sure.
a good
I
one.
think the second half, there's a lag in between. I really like the intro, going into breaking up Reggie Ledoux's, that whole character introduction, I think is amazing. Some of the best scenes and acting in the series. Sad, dark, disturbing for sure.
Mm.
I just think it's so well done. I think the middle of the episode kind of loses me for a little bit, but then the ending, that interview with Guy Francis and going and checking out that hurricaned out school,
Yeah.
reels you back in. And then of course the closing of Eli by that song that plays at the ending of the episode. Eli by Bosnian Rainbows or something. Just a great ending to the episode. Creepy, it's leaves you on the edge of your seat again, waiting for the next one. So
It's a
yeah, it
creepy show.
it
It's
really
a
is.
creepy
It like
show. It's yeah, okay, yeah, it's a detective show, but like no, this is beyond Seven. This is beyond Zodiac because it's
for
kind
sure.
of borderline like slasher in a way. Um,
Borderline slasher. It's borderline
Supernatural almost, right?
supernatural, like satanic in a way, like
Yeah, exactly.
cult-like, very dark. The sacrifice stuff, and
Yeah.
if I may, this is a good closing. We'll wrap this up. But I saw this theory about this. Okay, Maggie's dad has the discussion with Marty. So how's that secret case going? Or how's that high level case going? So he tries to get in information from Marty, right? I
Well,
saw this thing online that said if you look in his backyard, there's the same grass that they find on the body of Dora Lang, the sawgrass or whatever.
hmm.
He also has that line about, kids wearing black shit all over their faces and it's sex everywhere. A
Hmm.
perfect deflection. Their daughter draws those perverted pictures or, the sexual pictures,
Yeah,
plays with Barbies in a sexual way.
right.
Where did she learn that? Marty also looks at her pictures One of the guys is wearing like a skeleton type mask that Marty and Rust see in the snuff film that Rust steals later in the episode. I'll send you this link about this.
Very
It's fucking
interesting.
crazy. And then it kind
Wow.
of correlates to, well, why, Marty's like, why is it that girls have to learn about this stuff before boys do? And Maggie's like, because we have to.
Right.
Why did Maggie have to as a young girl in a prominent household? Like her parents are pretty wealthy, it seems like. Is that a subtle hint at like maybe her dad was a pervert? Like was the dad of Maggie involved in the cult and did something to
Wow. I have not
Marty's
seen
daughters?
that.
Yeah, it was pretty fucking interesting. And I was like, huh, it actually checks out. There's no reason for him to ask about the case first and foremost, really.
Yeah, please though send that to me. That's really interesting. Kind of goes what we were just talking about with maybe Casada case.
Exactly. Yeah,
You
exactly.
don't
Like,
really think about that until you rewatch it and truly analyze it. Well, maybe. But awesome discussion. We appreciate everybody tuning in. Just really, really quick, wanted to say this was a hell of a week for us. We averaged a subscriber a day. We've been getting a lot of feedback on TikTok and YouTube. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please subscribe. Please like. John, great discussion.
yeah, man.
And looking forward to busting out some work this week.
Absolutely.